Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And we're joined now by Dr. Robert Heineman, Alfred University Professor Emeritus. Dr. Heineman, thanks for filling in for Sean Hogan this morning.
Well, it's a big pair of shoes to fill, but we'll give it our best.
All righty. Well, Dr. Heineman, the big news this morning and over the weekend was the Mueller report has been given to the Attorney General's office in Washington. Conservatives are saying there's no collusion. Democrats are saying, but look at all the indictments and arrests that were made as a result. What do you say, Doc?
Well, I think generally Trump has to be pretty satisfied with the whole thing. I think this thing of collusion with the Russians is talk about fake news and a made-up effort. Basically, it begins, I think, with the Clintons and the campaign where Hillary kept bringing up this idea of interaction and cooperation with the Russians. And tied in with that, of course, is that she lost. So the idea that somehow Trump could win, the press, and I don't know how much the Clintons had to do with this afterwards, just would not let it go. And the advantage of this, from Trump's point of view, is that this guy, they've, spent $25 million or more. It's been 2 years. And to put it mildly, totally impartial. You can't claim that the Trump people somehow tried to find bias. Although they may well have tried to put some pressure here or there. And it's turned out, it seems to me, I don't see how anybody can argue with this. Now, this is not to say that the media is going to give up, but or that some of these gung-ho Democrats, and especially in the House, they just can't get it through their heads. But what's interesting about this, from my perspective, is remember when Kavanaugh was being investigated there or whatever by the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Flake said, well, no, we've got to go ahead and have an FBI report. And the fact is, the FBI report turned out and basically gave Kavanaugh a clean bill of health on this woman's charges and other charges. And that was sufficient, basically, to turn Collins and Flake into supporting him. So at the time, everybody thought, oh, my God, where's this all going to go? But the fact is, Kavanaugh is perfectly clean in this respect. And now, after having put up with this for 2 years, Trump and this whole idea of collusion goes pretty much down the drain, I think.
Well, Dr. Bob, as far as the Democrats giving up, doesn't look like they're going to. Looking at the headlines this morning off EmpireReportNewYork.com, says Nadler demands that Attorney General Barr testify. Nadler says executive privilege cannot hide wrongdoing. Schumer, Gillibrand, not satisfied. Morning Joe, good news for America.
Well, so Morning Joe is satisfied with the report, or what?
I don't know. I'm just reading the headlines. Let me go. Let's see. Okay, Morning Joe seems to be not giving up. If there was no collusion, Joe says, why did Trump and associates lie about Russia?
I'm not certain they did. But the point with Nadler here, and he's absolutely right, if there's a criminal investigation underway, then executive privilege doesn't come into play. But the fact of the matter is there is no criminal investigation of President Trump at this point or any of his close people. Now, it's true that there have been indictments against a number of other people, and the fact is Mueller's investigation uncovered, all kinds of fairly shady efforts on the part of some of these people Trump had working for him for a while. But when you're dealing with the kinds of environment, the kinds of people and environments that Trump works with in New York City and New Jersey and some of these other places, you're bound to run into some fairly shady people who make their living by pushing the envelope as far as they can. And that's one of the problems with appointing a special counsel. As soon as the president enters office, who knows what kind of friends and background and such these people have. I think maybe you ought to give a president a few years anyway before you dig into any kind of special counsel approach. Again, the claim was that somehow this affected the election, that Trump was cooperating with the Russians during this election. The whole thing is pretty much fabricated.
Talking to Dr. Robert Heineman this morning on the Newsmaker show. In other news today, Dr. Bob, I'm getting this from Real Clear Politics, former DNC chair Ed Rendell, the Pennsylvania Democrat, told the 2020 Democrat presidential candidates to look to the center and not the far left. Ed Rendell says all of a sudden the 2020 election went from a slam dunk for Democrats to something where we're going to have trouble beating Trump because he's going to make Democrat socialism swing to the left. He says, Ed Rendell says, I don't think the Democrat socialism thing is real, but Trump is going to make it an issue. Rendell continued saying that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, does not speak for the Democrats. What do you make of that, Dr. Bob?
Well, Rendell's a pretty capable fellow. I don't think there's any question about it, and I think he's right on the money there. But it's not that Trump is suddenly making up all this socialism and all these wild-eyed something for everybody in America for nothing ideas. The press, of course, is playing up Cortez. And, he's right. I mean, she's totally way out on it. But you'd think that she's speaking for the Democrats. But certainly Bernie Sanders is. I mean, he carries a big chunk of support in almost any poll that is taken. And he bills himself as a socialist. I mean, I'm not sure. I think he ran on that line in Vermont. So obviously he wants to run and he's an independent in the Senate, but votes with the Democrats. So he's, the idea that somehow he doesn't represent something in the Democrat Party, I think is incorrect. So, but no, Rendell is absolutely right, and I think we discussed this on our award-winning show there last Friday, that the more of these crazies and leftists you have there in the race, the more it totally gives a flavor of far left-wing ideology to the whole Democratic effort here. And of course, some of the people elected for the Democrats in the last election are way out there too. So it does make it tougher for anybody running on the Democrat ticket there, I think, to win.
Talking to Dr. Bob. I'm going to take a quick break, then check the forecast. We'll be back with Dr. Heineman right after this.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. Insurance can be, hard to understand. At the Ryan Agency, they're your local insurance experts. Questions get answered, problems get solutions. It's like having your own personal insurance advisor. Contact the Ryan Agencies today, your local experts with answers and solutions.
Insurance protection you can rely on. The Ryan Agency.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carroll, who says it's going to be a cold week.
It is, especially the first couple of days of the work week, Brian. By the end of the week, it starts to warm up. Why are we cold? Big high-pressure system settling out of southern Manitoba into the Dakotas this morning. It's going to cool off the central and eastern United States. But it's also going to result in a pretty quiet weather week. Not a lot of inclement weather headed our way. Right now, we're looking at some cloudiness pushing down to the south. Clearing skies moving in from the north. It's going to turn into a fairly sunny day. The temperature is going to be up to about 35 to 40. Sunrise was at 7:03 this morning. Sunset tonight at 7:28, and we will see that sunset. Clear skies are in the forecast for tonight. Chilly if you're headed out. Heavier jacket is in order. Lows tonight 15 to 20. We'll have sunny, cold weather again tomorrow. Highs 35 to 40.
Thank you, Rob. Carolyn, getting back to Dr. Robert Heineman, switching over now to state issues. This is from the Democrat and Chronicles website. The governor on Friday defended his administration's decision to enforce a ban on state-sponsored travel to North Carolina, calling it a statement of principle. Cuomo's comments came as 13 swimmers from SUNY Geneseo, Brockport, and Cortland were allowed to go to the event, but it was not paid for by the state schools, and they all go to SUNY schools, state of New York schools. The swimmers were allowed to compete in the event, but we had to fly in and stay overnight and pay for it themselves. Cuomo says this is a statement of principle because of the 2016 bathroom bill down in North Carolina. Dr. Bob, what do you make of this whole issue?
Well, I think it's a political effort on the part of Cuomo that is, frankly, hurting these kids, and it's really quite unfair to these SUNY students who obviously, in any of these sports, but swimming is a really tough sport to compete in, and they now they got a chance to go to the nationals, and they run into this. I just think it's the most unfair on the part of Cuomo. Of course, he doesn't want to back down, I guess, in that respect, but that's just totally unfair, and it's just unfortunate. I do see that Mr. Cuomo has not included the legalization of marijuana in his
yes
budget effort here.
That's been abandoned for this year, Dr. Bob.
Oh, has it? But did he turn it over to the state legislature then, or say?
I don't know exactly how the workings of it came out, but Cuomo issued a statement saying it's not going to be in this year's budget. It's just apparently something in the negotiations went wrong. Not quite sure what.
I see. Well, I just think it's good that the guy's backing off on this, and hopefully we'll back off on it completely because, again, studies show in places like Colorado and Washington that there are some serious offshoots of this kind of thing. And I was talking to a friend the other night who was smoked marijuana when he was in the 60s and 70s and whatever, and stopped and says, well, people, they smoke marijuana, and it's true. There's a lot of people who smoked marijuana when they were younger and no longer do, but the point is there's a significant percentage that don't, and there's a significant percentage that in fact go into very hard drugs and end up with really serious consequences. So the fact that people could say, well, gee, I smoke marijuana and it didn't affect me much, that doesn't cover the serious effects of the people who really got no business being able to do that.
Oh, sure. Hey, Dr. Bob, one thing that Governor Cuomo's being insistent on in this year's budget is not allowing the state budget to go through if it does not include making the state's 2% property tax cap a permanent thing. He says he won't go along with it, and neither will the Long Island State Senate delegation. No tax cap, no deal.
Yeah, well, they'll have to work that out. The problem with the limit there on property taxes is that the state has a real penchant for foisting off these unfunded mandates onto the counties and not paying for them, which puts a tremendous burden on county governments and the local governments. So if he's going to keep his tax cap, seems to me that he'd better make sure that any of these mandates are somehow funded by the state. I mean, they've got some really horrendous mandates in terms of the whole judicial process, where, for example, you have to now, on a first appearance, person doesn't have to have an attorney. Some of the counties have to somehow come up with public defender in the 2 or 3 in the morning. You've got to have these guys available, and in a lot of these areas they got to have Spanish and other language attorneys available. It's very costly, obviously. So I think we got to have a little balance here.
Dr. Bob, I see a lot of negative comments on and this is true of Tom Reed, too. I don't say that it isn't, but I see a lot of negative comments on Governor Cuomo's Facebook page. Doesn't seem to be coming from all conservatives. Same is true for Senator Gillibrand's Facebook page these days. A lot of negative comments from Democrats. Not that that's a scientific poll, but what do you make of that?
Well, I don't know what Gillibrand's doing, frankly. I saw a poll the other day where she had zero support for I think it was a poll out of Iowa, to tell you the truth. Biden and Bernie were up there, and I think there was 1 or 2 others, and she had zero. But she's out there still pushing it, and frankly, I don't see where she adds much, or if anything, to the Democrat stable of candidates. So I can see where some Democrats would be saying, "Hey, why don't you step aside here and let us get on with this?"
Yeah, that seems to be coming from a lot of Democrat voters, both on Cuomo's pages and Gillibrand's pages. Again, Congressman Tom Reed gets the same thing. We've been talking with Dr. Bob. We are out of time. Got to leave it there. Dr. Heineman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always good to get together, Brian.